we share, with a dash of this and a pinch of that, mixed all up with care. The best company and conversation, recipes and new creations. We're cooking up something good here at home. We are cooking up something good here at home.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. But look, I just have a whole bunch of people that just dropped by, and we're cooking up some delightful things. I wish I could talk longer, but I'll talk to you later, okay? Okay. Thanks for calling. See you later. Bye. Did you ever get one of those phone calls right when you had a zillion things to do? Sometimes it's hard to be patient, but it's best to be patient because you don't want to offend a friend. Well, today, our program is one of the dishes that my mom always made, and it kind of was a Sunday treat because it had steak. It was one of the main ingredients was steak. And our sponsors, Foodlands, one of our sponsors, has a wonderful selection of steaks and all kinds of fresh foods. And I would ask you to do me a real big favor. You know, the people that sponsor at home, like the Foodland Company and the Jordan Banana Company that's in Dravosburg, and Wooley's Balcony Cookware down at the Strip in Pittsburgh, and some of the other ones that you don't see full screens of, and that's Value City Furniture. These are people that have helped to make this program possible. And I would like the next time that you're in any of those businesses just to find somebody, whether it be a clerk, whether it be the manager, and just thank them, if you enjoy this program, that is, thank them for being sponsors of At Home, because we couldn't do it without them. And we really couldn't have a program without you being here watching us all the time. We appreciate that and we thank you. And you're sending all kind of good hints, you're sending recipes, and I appreciate it because we're going to do some programs in the next couple of weeks that have the recipes that you have submitted. And so I want you to get your paper and pencil, get started, because we're coming right back to make stuffed steak. And are your mashed potatoes lumpy? I've been meaning to ask you that. Are they lumpy? Well, I'm going to show you today how to make the creamiest mashed potatoes you've ever had. We're going to get started as soon as we come back from this important message. Here's today's at-home hint. When buying pineapples, look for firm fruit, heavy for its size, with distinct aroma and plump, glossy eyes. A green pineapple indicates unripeness. Well, to get the dinner going today, we have a wonderful piece of round steak. Now you notice how lovely this has been trimmed. That's one thing about Foodlands, they trim this steak beautifully, so there's none of the fat. We're trying to stay away from all of that. And they trim it for you so you don't have to pay for it when you're buying your steaks. And this will feed a nice number in your family. I mean, there probably will even be leftovers. So the first thing we're going to start with is we're going to take, 7 or 8 slices of bread, and leave the crusts on, and we'll just cube them. Now you can tear them apart. You can cut them like I am. It doesn't have to be fancy. My goodness. If you've been watching any length of time, you know that fancy is not something that is mandatory here in my kitchen. It's nice when it turns out that way, but if you don't have the time to struggle with everything being so fancy, don't worry about it. You've tuned into the right cooking program. Well, we're going to take our bread cubes, and while I tell you that we're chopping this up, I have also taken about a half a cup of onion, about a third to a half cup of celery, and about a fourth of a cup of mushrooms. And I have them in a skillet, and they have been sauteing because you want to give them a little tenderness before you stuff the steak with them. I don't know if you've ever heard of stuffed steak or not, but Italians make it, and they call it braciole. But they cook it a little differently than I'm cooking today because, of course, everything with the Italians has sauce. This doesn't have sauce. We're going to be making a gravy, a mushroom gravy with our stuffed steak. So that's about 7 slices or so. And we're going to put our sauteed celery, onions, and mushroom that have been sauteing in some butter. This is very similar to the dressing recipe, or the stuffing recipe that we used during the holidays, if you remember, when we made the stuffed turkey. And we're going to give that some salt and pepper, fresh ground pepper, the way we like it. Okay. Now you can add other things if you like. Some people put oysters and stuff. I'm not into that. So I don't usually do that. I just make a simple bread stuffing. Make sure that the salt's coming out. Okay. Okay, let's see. Make sure we don't get... Here we go. I have to just check this burner because I've got something else I want to get started there. I'm going to put the pan back on that I was doing the sauteed mushrooms and onions in, because we're going to be using it to fix our steak. Better turn that down. Once we get the stuffing made, just mix it up, and it will work beautifully. Smells great. Anytime you fry onions and celery together, smells wonderful. Okay. Now what we do with the steak is you take some pieces of just plain old string, okay, and you cut them about 15 inches long, maybe not even that long. You lay them on your counter. Of course, your counter should be really, make sure it's nice and clean. You don't want anything there that shouldn't be. Okay, you put your string out at intervals of just a couple of inches apart. Okay, here we go. I'm going to use 5, depending on the size of your steak. Okay, and you kind of do it that way. Then you take your piece of steak, and you try to find a piece that isn't in 2 pieces. In other words, there's something that's holding it together there. Now, we may have to adjust our strings. Okay, that's okay, because you can do that. May not even need that 5th string. Let's just wait and see. Put your steak out there. Then you begin to put your stuffing in the center of the steak. Okay? And you mound it. Don't worry about, oh, their little pieces will fall out or whatever. It'll be fine. Just mound it in the center of the steak. Then you're going to pull the steak up over the stuffing. And while you're doing that, you're going to be pushing that stuffing against the meat so that it holds. Hope we're getting some good shots of that, because it's really important for us to do that. We get good shots? Good. I knew we would. Our director always gives us good shots. Right, Lauren? I guess he's saying right, okay? Yeah, right. All right, Lauren. Good to hear from you up there, buddy. All right, then we're going to start and take our string that we have laid out, and we're just going to tie a knot. Pull it tight so it'll come together. And this is the tricky part, trying to get that to stay there so that you can bring the next one down, but you pull it tight and it will stay. Okay? Move on down the steak, and you're knotting and tying, and that is what will hold the stuffing into the steak. See, there's no fancy ingredients in this stuffing. It's just plain old bread stuffing like we've made before. And if you did our Thanksgiving turkey, you sure made it, because it's the same kind of stuffing. Now, there's this little bit over here. You can take a toothpick if you have an odd-shaped piece like this, and just insert the toothpick through. Well, try not to let one break. Harry, you gave me a dud toothpick. One of our cameramen always has toothpicks on him, and I said, now, Harry, you have to come through. And he wants a credit on the end of the program that says Toothpicks by Harry, but I think that's a bit much. But anyway, then if your steak you feel like it's falling apart, it's not holding together, just put toothpicks in, but remember that when you go to serve it, you certainly don't want to serve toothpicks. Now over here, I would try to add a little more stuffing, because it looks like we have room for it here. Okay? And again, we'll take another toothpick, or a skewer works fine, whichever you happen to have. And I'm going to just skewer this meat, trying to hold it together. My pan's on here. Let me see which one's getting hot. Looks like they both are. We're going to add a little oil to this pan. Okay? Very good. That can be getting hot because what we're going to do, this steak cooks best on top of the stove. At least that's what I have found. When I do steak and put it in the oven, it tends to always get dry for me. So after you have knotted up your meat roll, and it's not fancy. I know that those chefs, I've watched them, and they do a loop and they loop it to the next one. It's so fancy, and I think, oh, it's too pretty to cook then because you've done all this fancy knotting, and I'm not putting that down. If you can do that, do it. That's great. But if you can't, here is your steak roll. See? It's all nicely put together, okay? Now you're going to take this and put it in your skillet with hot grease, okay? Now, what this is going to do is braise a while because you want to brown the steak. Nothing worse than a piece of steak that doesn't look like it's been browned. If it just looks like it's been almost boiled, it has no appeal. So the important thing is to keep this moving in the fry pan. Once your oil is good and hot, if I can move some of these things out of the way, you're going to keep turning it. You see how quickly already that started to brown? Now you really need a little larger skillet, and I have another one that is totally done for us that I want you to see. So you just keep turning it. You can leave it sit for just a couple of minutes at each side, but keep turning it, and the juices that come out of the steak then, that's what will brown and make wonderful gravy, the mushroom gravy that we're going to be making. So we're going to let that go for a little while, being sure to keep an eye. Now, the other thing is you never put a lid totally on a pan and expect it to brown because it traps the steam in there. The steam makes moisture, and then you add water to it, and it will not brown with water. So you set it off to the side so that the air can keep the steam evaporated, and it will brown, okay? Now, while that's browning and cooking, and we'll keep our eye on it, I'm going to just move it back this way. I want to start with our vegetables, which is going to be some wonderful zucchinis. These are zucchinis. It's a good zucchini. Get the glasses out of the way here. And some yellow squash, and we're going to make a saute. And we have some oil in our pan, and I'm just going to roughly, where's my board over here? Clean it off a minute here. We're going to roughly chop up some garlic, and that way it will add flavor to zucchini and the squash. I like these vegetables. I like them a lot. And they're tasty. They're good for you. And sometimes you can get kids to eat stuff when you make it a little different than what you normally would, rather than saying, now we're just going to have this boiled zucchini or boiled squash, and the kids kind of go, oh no, because a lot of kids don't like those kind of vegetables. So we add some garlic. Garlic is good for you. How would you ever be able to cook without good garlic? I don't know. It's hard for me to understand because garlic is very important for flavoring. Okay? Got the garlic going. Now we're going to add some sliced onion, and this is all done very quickly because this stuff will cook up very fast. Zucchini has a lot of moisture in it, so it will not take it long to cook at all. Okay, and I'm going to turn that down. Let's go back and take a look and see what the steak is doing. See if it's time for it to brown. See how nice and brown that is? That's what you're looking for right there. That's what you want it to look like. You keep checking it. Remember though, don't let it get too brown because it will burn quickly because steak does that. Okay, so we have our zucchini and our onions are browning in olive oil. That's all. Then we're going to chop them, and you don't peel zucchinis. If you're not familiar with it, you do not peel the zucchini. The skin's good for you. But I just do a rough chop of it. And the pieces are not necessarily even the same size. But what I will do is cut this in half because it'll be easier to eat instead of having a big piece of zucchini. And this is just a zucchini saute. In that, I mean, we just fry it up in a skillet a little bit with some other seasonings and other flavorings. Okay? Hardest part in doing multiple dishes like this is to try to get everything done at the same time. And trying to get the oven and the stove to cooperate, because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But we're working on that. These little ones, you can put them in whole. Okay. Just toss those in. Okay, and we're going to use a little yellow squash. Again, it's the same, kind of the same family. So we just chop this. You can tell just by the way it's cut so easily that it's not a hard vegetable at all, like a potato is harder. That's not hard at all. And very good for you. Eat them when you can because they're very good. Lots of recipes. Somebody just wrote to us recently and said, could you give us some recipes with zucchini and squash? Well, here's one right here. We just happen to be planning it anyway. Let's take another look at the steak, making sure that it browns evenly. See, it's getting brown there. Okay. Now you notice the drippings in the pan that are starting to get brown. That's what will make your gravy, and that's important for that to be. Okay. So keep your heat even, but keep it going. Okay? Remember, don't totally close it or else it will not brown. Now, let's see what we're doing over here. You can begin to mix these around. Now, you can add other vegetables. I'm just using the yellow squash and the zucchini today. But there's a whole host of other vegetables that you can add to this. In fact, I might just add, let's add a little handful of mushrooms that I have here. Just a few. Maybe some people won't like them, so we don't overpower it. But let that continue to saute. It won't take long at all. Okay? And we're going to add some salt and pepper. A little salt, a little pepper, not too much. As they say, not too much. Okay, and just kind of let that cook down. You won't taste anything any better as far as vegetables are concerned. Okay, our steak's going to town. And before we went on the air, we did the potatoes because I want to show you how to make delicious mashed potatoes. And I know that some people tell me, oh, Arlene, I just make the kind that you just, whip them. They're instant potatoes. But I want to show you, these potatoes have been cooking. Now, normally I would save the broth that will come off those potatoes, and I will put that into my gravy because that's very good flavor for your gravy. But I want to drain these because I'm going to go over here to the sink because I think it's important for you to know how to do basic things besides knowing how to open that package and reading the instructions that say make it this way or do it that way. Okay, so here's our potatoes. And I like red potatoes when I'm doing this because I think red potatoes are really good because they're the tender ones. I'm going to put a little milk on the stove because that's important in mashing potatoes, to have your milk hot. Now, a lot of people, when they do their milk, they just pour it right out of the container or whatever. I don't do that. I like to warm it up because nothing worse than cold potatoes. And if you add hot milk to them, it keeps them hot longer. Now, let's see, we need some salt in here. Again, you salt to taste. If you're on a restricted diet, don't put a lot of salt in them. Now, I also put pepper in mine. Some people don't, but we like pepper. You don't add the milk at this point. Do not, read my lips, do not add the milk at this point because the lumps will never come out. Will never come out, okay? So what we do, you begin to just take your mixer and you push up and down, mashing what's there. All right? Get the butter off there. And you start to mix them. You might stop and begin to push again. Okay? And you might use that start and stop action a lot while you're doing this. Because sometimes the potatoes will mound up over the beaters. So it's really important just to keep it going till you get all the lumps out. Okay? When all the lumps are pretty much out, that's the time you add the milk. Now, some people still make them the old-fashioned way with the potato masher, and that's fine. That's great too. But what I like to do is I add my milk. After I have mixed them with the mixer, I add the milk a little at a time because you want them to be creamy. And sometimes this takes longer than you'll think it'll take until you can get all these potatoes. Now, I have to tell you, this is not enough potatoes for 2 people. This is more like 10 cameramen, technicians, directors, PAs, audio people, and assorted other people in the building. So we made a lot of potatoes because everybody likes mashed potatoes usually. Okay? Now what you want to do too is the ones that go up around the edge, you got to keep pushing them down so they get in there, because there's nothing worse than a lumpy potato. Okay? Here we go. Keep adding the milk a little at a time. And what I also would serve with this steak and the gravy would be some carrots, some buttered carrots, just plain old boiled buttered carrots, and maybe a light dessert. You would not want a heavy dessert with this because the bread in the steak is a filling dinner. I think I'm going to add the rest of that milk to those potatoes. Ron, how much time do we have here? 3 minutes, okay. I want to show you how to make the gravy too. So why don't we take a break and tell you how to get all these recipes, and when we come back, we're going to show you the entire finished product. We'll see in just a minute. We're taking a little extra time at the end of the program because I want to show you how to put it all together. The only thing we have to do now is make the gravy, and this is the drippings that I've added some water to. I want to add a few mushrooms to that because we have mushrooms in the stuffing, so that kind of brings it all together. They don't take long to cook. You really are letting this reduce a little bit so it doesn't taste watery, but it picks up all the flavorings of the steak that you've just cooked. And you want to keep stirring and scraping that bottom of that pan. Bring it to a nice rolling boil, because when you do that, you add just a little salt, okay, a little bit of salt, and I have just made my flour and water thickening that I usually do, just flour and water, and we'll give you all the portions because that's what the consistency it should be. All right, and you want to take your whip, of course, because this is the most important thing when it comes to making lump-free gravy, is you begin to pour, and as you're pouring, you keep stirring. Keep stirring. Boy, I really didn't need much for this because this was ready to go. Now you say, oh, Arlene, that looks lumpy. You know, you're right, and that's because there's a lot of grease in this, but don't worry. Add a little water if it gets too thick. Will not hurt it. And then the longer you stir it, the lumps will come out. Don't ever get in a panic and say, oh, I've ruined it, look at all the lumps. No, if you stir it, you keep stirring it with the whip, because the whip blends and knocks all the lumps out of it. Just keep stirring it, it will come out fine. And you want to let it boil just a little bit, stirring constantly, because that will take the flour taste out of the gravy. Nothing worse than tasting flour and water in your mouth when it's supposed to taste like gravy. Okay, so come to the table. I want to show you what we have. We pour some of this into our gravy boat. Let's see if I can do this without making a mess. As long as you have the cloths to clean up, don't worry about it. We'll make it. Now, if you like your gravy a little thicker than that, that's fine. Just add a little bit more thickening to it. Whatever consistency. And I'll tell you that there's nothing like steak gravy. Here is our saute that I've told you about. This is our yellow squash, zucchini, onion, and garlic. Here's our wonderful mashed potatoes, just as creamy as they can be. And voila, there it is, what we've all been waiting for. That's our stuffed steak. Remember I told you the stuffing around it with the stuffing in the center with the steak around it. And I've just boiled few carrots, added a little bit of parsley and butter to them. How pretty that is. And that's a big part of eating is how you present it. I would add a little tossed salad to that. I'm going to show you a real quick dessert that you could do. This is a pound cake. If you can bake them, fine, if you have the time. If not, there are several kinds that are available at your store. Take a slice of butter pound cake, put it on your dish, all right? And I'm going to take a banana. I'm just going to slice some slices on my pound cake. It's a real quickie. And kids love bananas. I don't know of any kids that don't like bananas. Okay, we'll slice some more here. You need to have some sugared strawberries ready. And you know, that's just cleaned and hulled and sugared down to taste. That's here. And you're going to put some strawberries over top of the pound cake with a little bit of juice, not too much. Whoops. Okay. One wants to hang out over the edge there. We can't have that. Whoop. Doesn't matter. Kids will get them, don't you worry, because they taste good. And on top of that, we're going to add a dollop of whipped cream. And that's one of the easiest desserts. How much easier? And I'll tell you, they'll love it, because when berries are in season, you could put pineapple in that, you could put peaches, you can do whatever you want to. This is a meal fit for a king and a queen. And please be sure to join us the next time, because it just wouldn't be the same without you right here at home. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Fresh produce provided by Jordan Banana, wholesalers of fresh fruit and vegetables in Dravosburg, PA. Cookware provided by Woolies. Your favorite gourmet deserves the best for less at Woolly Balcony Cookware. Groceries provided by Foodland, where the answer is always yes. Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.